So if anybody doesn't understand that, you just click OK on your end. I'm really excited to be the one to host Janet, my mother, for this really kind of a milestone in your life, Mom, publishing your memoir. It's something you've talked about for a really long time. And to have family and friends, old and new, here to talk with you about this. The way that we'll do this event today is is there anyone here who does not understand Zoom, or are we all Zoomers by now? Like, raise your hand like this if you want me to go through the how to raise your hand and all that.
I don't get it at all. So if I get stuck with anything, you'll have to help me. Okay.
We'll help you out. We'll help you out.
Okay.
But you're the star, so you can do whatever you want.
Oh, am I? I'm the diva.
You're the diva today.
Okay.
So you guys can all stay on mute for a little bit. I'm just going to ask Mom some questions, and we'll and then we'll open it up to a Q&A and just have a casual conversation in a little bit. But right now, I want to introduce Janet Pratt, author, and my mother for 64 years, Mom. Can
yes.
you believe that?
Yes.
Mom has, during the pandemic and beyond, we have been working on your book. So I'd like to hear a little bit from you about where did this idea for your book first pop into your mind, and how long have you been thinking about writing a book?
Well, I really never thought about writing a book as a kid. And a matter of fact, what I really wanted to do was to be a ballerina, but my biology and my long, slim body didn't happen. In fact, I'm short and curvy, so that was out. Then I wanted to be a concert pianist, but then I got busy with biology in high school, and I thought, oh, I think I'd rather do some science research. And so I quit piano. And then I went on to school, just loving to read and write and read and write all along. And finally, I did what society wanted me to do. And that was what was expected of most young women. I was to either become a secretary or a nurse. But besides that, I needed to be a wife and a mother and raise children and have a perfect home. So I thought, well, I better get my priorities straight here. So if you read my book, you'll find out how I proposed to my husband, because I needed a husband if I was going to get married. And I loved this guy. We were both boyfriend and girlfriend in college. And he was in the Air Force. So I called him and I said, I think you need to come home so we can get married. Well, he said, let me think about it. And that sort of set me back on my heels, but I knew he'd come. I just sort of figured he would. And he did. And we got married and we had 3 children, and I did all of that. But all the time I was doing all of those things, I was very happy doing the domestic role. However, I kept writing all the time and I couldn't quit. It was just sort of something I had to do. And became an English teacher because I love literature so much. And being an English teacher, of course, I wanted to read every book in the library. And libraries became the most wonderful place, most wonderful building in the city that I lived in. And I just read a lot and wrote a lot, never intending to write a book until my daughter said one time, and I'm referring to Kelly now, said, Mom, you've got to put this together. There's just no doubt. You've just got to put it together. And I thought, oh my God, that's just too much work, Kelly. I can't do that. But after retirement, I guess I started thinking about it. And one day I said to the kids, you know, if I ever write a memoir, I'm going to name it Dancing in the Kitchen. And that's sort of when it began, the idea, but I still wasn't sold on the work involved. I thought it's too much. And I used to wake up at night or in the morning, sometimes 3 o'clock was a good time. And I'd think, what would I name it? And I'd have all these ideas in my head. And then another dream would come on another night, and I'd think, maybe it should be about music because I love music. No, that didn't work. Anyway, finally, Kelly popped in to my life, literally. and she began to love literature as much as I did. And she loved words. She memorized stuff that we read together. And it just sort of became a natural thing to start putting it together into a book. And I really never thought it would happen, though. I really didn't believe it. But here I am, folks. It did happen.
And it's taken, you retired, I think, what was it?
1996.
Yeah. So, and you've been working on it. There's a lot of iterations of this collection of yours, because your book is, so it's it's not just a bunch of, it's not like a block of text. Say a little bit about why you chose to make it a collection like it is. And talk a little bit about that.
After I started the big task of, excuse me, folks, this is a problem I have in old age. But anyway, as soon as I decided to start organizing it, I had to keep reading the old pieces. And I thought, there's more to this than just dates and times and issues of my life. What's running through it is the fact that every human being on this earth who lives a long time, and I have lived a long time, you run into challenges, one after another after another. I mean, as a young bride, I didn't know that having a baby would be challenging. I just thought it would be fun. Well, it was a challenge and I loved it. And that was one of my first challenges. And then going along and finding out that illness doesn't just happen in other families to other people, it happens in my family too. And those were big challenges. And all the time, excuse me, that I was teaching, I learned that I really loved children, and that those little individual children in my big classroom, each of them had issues that they were dealing with in their families. So when I finally got down to the real seriousness of it, I realized my book looked at relationships in families, relationships in communities, addiction problems in families, in cities and towns and neighborhoods, how addiction is handled in schools. Most of the time, I'm sorry to say, in my experience, it was handled with denial. So I think a lot of my book might be kind of sad as I jumped into all of that stuff, because those challenges were heavy. But
Shantae has a question. Shantae, why don't you unmute yourself? I'd love for you to ask Janet your question.
How did you decide memoir? I've thought of a book, but I have like a horror novel and a business book, but it never occurred to do a memoir.
Well, I think it's because I realized that even though my self-esteem was not very good all my life because of a lot of things, I realized that every single human being's life is unique. You know, there isn't anybody who has lived a life exactly like mine. But on the other hand, there are a lot of things that we have in common. And so putting my whole life together and looking at it that way in the big picture, I thought, gosh, I'll bet there might be other mothers and career people who have big ideas and think their lives have been wonderful and tragic and beautiful and awful and all those things. So why shouldn't I tell my story? Maybe somebody else will be able to get some courage from it. That's why.
Thanks, Shantae. Chris, your question is sort of along the same lines. You want to ask Mom your question?
Yeah. Hi, Janet.
Hi,
I was
Chris.
wondering who you wrote the book for. Who did you imagine would be reading it, and did that change the way you wrote it?
Yes, I guess it did. At the beginning, the reason I wasn't real hot on the idea was because my idea of memoir was just family, when this family had babies and when they got together and when they moved here and there and so on and so forth, and lots of pictures. But then I thought that's kind of boring. Nobody except my family wants to read that. So I didn't want to do that. I was lazy and I didn't want to do that for my family. I thought I'll let Kelly do that. She's the historian here. And so I started looking more at issues, life issues and challenges. And oh gosh, so many things. And especially when I was teaching junior high, I really got a new perspective on life, knowing that it's probably in the 6th, 7th grade, that period where kids start to say, I'm not a kid anymore, I'm growing up here and I've got some big decisions to make. And boy, is that a tough time for most kids. It really, really is. It was tough for me. I'm sure it was tough for most people. And so there I was in school, able to help individuals, individual kids. And I had a real insight into that age, because I thought, my God, that kid is a twerp. He's awful. He's awful to have in class. He's mean and so on. But then I realized he's doing the best he can right now because of who he is. And because of that feeling of universalness of these kids who were all up off the wall, all of them. I don't think anybody would want to teach junior high if they knew what kind of a mess that is. Right, Mary Kessler? Yeah, she was a junior high school teacher. That's where I met her. And just getting an idea of those little individuals growing up in this world. I wanted to understand them more, and I wanted to help modify the schools and make them better so that they could become adults that were more comfortable with their own selves. Because I later on in my life, I started getting uncomfortable with all the things I was expected to do. And I was really avoiding some of the things that I wanted to do, like write. And I guess I thought those things were just hobbies and should not be taken seriously. Well, that's okay for me now. I can look back and say, that's right. I did start getting uneasy about not fulfilling who I really was. But on the other hand, I couldn't be who I am today if I hadn't done it. Mm-hmm. So it's okay, isn't it? Yeah.
You know, I call myself, when I do this kind of work, like I did with you, Mom, over the last year and a half, and we kind of dabbled in it before then, but we really, jumped into the deep end over the pandemic. I call myself a book doula because I'm not an editor. I'm not a writer. I play a designer on TV, but God knows I am not a designer. I know how to use the software, and that does not a designer make, but it worked well enough for us in this situation. But the question that you asked, Chris, about who did you write the book for, that's one of the hardest things for an author to, and in experience, I worked with a bunch of authors in a different setting. They typically, and you and I had some kind of arguments about this, because you wanted to like include a bunch of pictures and you wanted to do a lot of things. And I kept saying, okay, Mom, you're in Barnes and Noble. Who is that woman walking in the door who needs to read this book? What is her life about right now? Remember those conversations?
Yeah, I do.
That's when you kept, and I kept saying, do you need those pictures in this book? Does she need those pictures, or does she need your stories? And that's when we would have these kind of tugs of war back and forth. That's when you started going, she needs my stories. She needs to know what I learned, right?
Yeah. And that sort of goes back to Shantae's question too.
Yeah.
What is a memoir? I just had a very narrow idea of what a memoir is. And I didn't really want to do a boring memoir that no one would be interested in except my family members, you know. But I did want to, and then you kept saying to me, oh, Mom, someday you can put a scrapbook together and put all the pictures in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, and there's still that. We can still take this book and turn it into a coffee table book with pictures if we want, you know, if we want to do that. But the other thing is your book isn't just prose.
No.
You also decided against the grain a little bit to include poetry, journal entries, recipes, Mary Kessler.
Yes.
All sorts of things. So
no, it's Tim Kessler's recipe. Mary will be mad at me if I don't mention that.
Okay.
I mean, it was her recipe, but it was Tim's poem that praised it. Okay.
So tell us why you chose that format, because format in writing is a very
well, you know, Kelly and everybody, I don't know really why I chose to include my poems, except one day I read in some magazine or other that there were publishers out there looking for people who wanted to do a multi-literary book with essays and poems and little stories and so on, and put it all together. So I just had to read that once, and that was all the permission I needed to go ahead and try it.
It's Wendy Blumseth just popped into the room, and great timing, Wendy, because Wendy is a photo poet, she calls herself. And as we know, poetry can sometimes express emotions better than anything. Do you have a poem from your book you'd like to read?
Yes, I do.
Would you do that for us?
I would love to. I looked at it today and I thought, this poem has to be at the end of the book, and I'm glad it's at the end of the book. Are we about ready to be done with our Zoom? No.
Do you want to wait and read it at the end?
Well, yes.
Okay.
I'd rather.
Okay, did you have another reading that you wanted to do?
Pardon? Yes, I do.
Okay,
I do.
Let's hear from your book.
Well, you know, when getting married and making the commitment of marriage, I took it seriously. And I thought the little religion that I had from my childhood, I remember this, whither thou goest, I will go. And so I thought, well, oh, darn, every time Dick wanted to make a career change, I thought, well, I better pack up and follow him on. And so I did, and I did, and I did. And all the time I said to myself, this is going to be good for my kids. They're going to be learning how to adjust to new things. And since then, they've told me, Mother, you don't know how hard that was. But anyway, that's what happened. But Whither Thou Goest took us down to Mississippi at one point. And when we were in Mississippi, I had an experience with my little baby boy. He was 2. And we were on a campground, and the background of this that I'm going to read is my husband quit an insurance job and took a job with some harebrained people at the insurance company who wanted to go down to Mississippi and buy this campground that had been ravaged by Camille and rebuild it and make it really profitable again. And then Dick would be on his own, and he'd be his own boss and everything would be wonderful. So I gave in. It was one of the hardest moves I've ever made, was moving out of that house in Madison, Wisconsin, where I was raising my kids and doing substitute teaching. Anyway, we landed in Mississippi. And here, am I holding this all right? So
Yep, you're good.
okay. One morning, Stephen and I were alone, doing house chores and minding the campground store. The girls were in school, Christ Episcopal Day School in Bay St. Louis, Louisiana. And Dick had gone to Gulfport to search out bankers to help finance the campground renovation. Suddenly, I realized that the house was too quiet and went to check on Stephen, my little boy. I spotted him through the front window, toddling down the driveway about a quarter mile long toward the county road. He was hiking along as fast as his chubby 2-year-old legs could carry him toward an old pickup at the end of the drive. I ran after him, trying to reach him before he got to the pickup. I saw 3 scrubby looking men leaning against the truck. "Hey, little man," one of them called to Steve, "come on over here." Even though it was a hot, humid morning, I felt cold as I hurried towards Steve, hoping I could reach him before he got to the truck. "Stephen," I called, trying to make my voice sound angry. We reached the pickup at about the same time. I scooped him up and whirled around, heading back to the house. The men's voices and laughter followed me. "Hey, little lady, where's your man? You here alone? That's a pretty little boy you got there. Bye-bye, Steve. Take care of your mama now, you hear?" Laughter all the way back, and my heart was pounding. I walked fast, holding Steve in my arms, feeling the men's eyes on my back. I knew we were helpless, vulnerable. We were Yankees lost in a land of folks who did not like us. We talked funny. I'm sure they wished we would go back up north. We reached the house, but I had not heard the truck start up. Was this a bad sign? Stephen and I went into the house and sat down on the couch by the piano, where I could see the road from the front window. I picked up green eggs and ham and began reading to Steve, one ear tuned for sounds of the pickup in the driveway. Dr. Seuss calmed us both, and soon I finished the book and went back to our day, running the campground and waiting for Dick and the girls to get home. I guess I missed a line there. And soon I saw the truck pull away and head down the county road. Okay, sorry about that. Home, I thought, this isn't home. It didn't take long, however, for Dick to realize he had been lied to by Walt, promised things that were not to be. One night I heard Dick tell Walt on the phone that this was a doomed mission. This idea man, or con man, sitting comfortably back in Wisconsin, had told Dick to mortgage some recreational boats in order to get a loan. The only trouble was the boats were already mortgaged. Dick told him in a loud voice that he would not go to jail for him. That's a quote. Quote, "I will not go to jail for you or get this damn campground going." I cheered silently in the background. The very next day, we rented a U-Haul truck, packed up our furniture, strapped the fuselage of Dick's baby Great Lakes airplane on the back of the truck, stashed odds and ends in the little green Volkswagen, and headed north. We had everything but our Siamese cat, Tony, who had met his fate somewhere in that damn swamp called a campground. Dick and Steve drove the U-Haul. The girls and I followed in the VW, keeping our eyes on the tail of the airplane that stuck up about 2 feet above the top of the truck. We were a strange little caravan driven by 2 disappointed Yankees trying to find their way in a strange land. It was Thanksgiving Day when we arrived in Minnesota, home in time for turkey dinner. Audrey and I hugged and did a little round and round dance in her kitchen. I was so glad to be home, even though I was emotionally limping from the last few months. We said our Thanksgiving prayer with more conviction than I had ever felt before, and we had a feast. Tomorrow we'll figure out what we're going to do next, I thought. We slept like the weary sojourners that we were. That I chose that to read because most books don't have much action in them, and I know people like to read about action. So remember it, Kelly?
Oh, God. Yeah, I remember it. I remember watching that damn U-Haul. I was 13, watching it swaying in front of us as Dad was dozing off on the thing as we're driving north. Oh my gosh. Yes, I remember.
Okay.
Yes, that was, yeah.
But a good experience in retrospect, right?
Well, and that's one of those things, I think, that reading a story like this as a younger person, worrying about what damage you're doing to your kids, as you maybe go here and go there with your kids. Sure, I was not, it changed me, being dragged around the country here and there and everywhere. But in hindsight, it also made me who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to make new friends and, all of those things. And had I not experienced, right now we're going through all sorts of things in our country with the racial tensions and all of that, and being some groups being othered. And that was the one time that I was singled out as an other down there, pointed at and called a Yankee and all of those kind of things. And they take that stuff very seriously down there. And so it was, in hindsight, it was a really not positive at the time, but it was a good experience.
Sure.
I would, it's a cultural shock for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's everybody, if you want, I'm going to put us on gallery view on my end. And if anybody, let's just open up and
Chat.
Yeah. Say hello. Devin, welcome. Wendy, welcome. Good to see everybody. So does anybody have any questions? Let's just pretend we're sitting around the fire, the campfire, or the coffee table, or whatever you happen to want to sit around, and just have a chat. Has anybody had a chance to get the book and read it yet?
I just saw Wendy real quick. Where did she go?
On my screen, she's down on the bottom, but I don't know where she is on your screen.
Oh, okay.
I haven't gotten the book yet, but, and Cal, I was wondering if you would put a link to it in the chat
of
box
course.
so that we
Yes.
could go and do that.
Good
I'd like to.
idea. Thank you.
Sure.
And I liked the passage that you just read, and the concept of emotionally limping. That is an amazing image that you can feel.
Want to introduce yourself, Devin? Tell when you guys speak, introduce yourselves a little bit.
Sure. Hi, Janet. I'm a member of the Athena Village, but and sorry for being late, but I caught your reading of your passage, and I really appreciated not only that the vulnerability, but that's an amazing emotional imagery.
Thank you.
Emotionally limping. That's perfect.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Appreciate that, Devin.
Mary, we can't hear you. There you go.
And unmute. There were some very noisy trucks out there. So I came in. Oh, well, you couldn't hear it.
No.
Unmute. Oh, sorry. Could have stayed out. Oh, well. Janet, I want to talk a little bit about your writing group. Because that's part of the reason I started writing, was our writing group. And you introduced me to Natalie Goldberg, and we went to Vermont and went to another writing conference, and you've been instrumental in my love of writing. So thank you, officially.
You are very welcome, Mary. And to the rest of you, you ought to see how much writing Mary has done. She showed me a little bit of her journals yesterday. Holy cow. You better get busy, lady, and a book out there too.
You keep saying it.
So what was the name of your writing group? I remember it was what, 4 of you?
The North 4th Street Writers Group.
And you were all from South High, is that right?
Yeah,
Except him.
Except
yeah,
you.
Agassiz, the
Oh.
junior high at that time.
Clem Sorgard, Mom, Janet Pratt, Mary Wojtasek at the time, and Tim Kessler, right?
That's right. That's right. Well,
Mary Kessler.
Mary
it was
Kessler.
Mary Kessler.
Oh,
at the
okay.
time, too. Yeah.
And you guys met how often? And how, as a writers group, what did you do for one another?
We tried to meet once a month. And Mary, correct me if I'm wrong. We were pretty good at that, at once a month. And we were each expected to bring something to read. And it could be any kind of an entry or a poem or whatever we wanted, or we could just pass if we wanted to also. But I think we inspired one another to keep us sort of on track. We tried to improve as we went along, but something happened though. I remember this so clearly. There were a few people that said they'd like to join the writers group, and the writers group had become so kind of close that we didn't want any joiners.
Mhm.
That's terrible. But it was sort of, it was kind of, I don't know, it just happened that way.
Closed.
Has anyone else been a part of a writers group or interested in starting one up? We've got a lot of writers in Athena Village, a lot of them, several people that have written books.
We have one at the library in Detroit Lakes.
Do you?
Mhm. Once a month again.
A friend of mine has started one almost a year ago now. And apparently there's a group that was in Boston 20 years ago called Stone Soup Poetry,
I've
20
heard of
years
it.
ago. And she moved to Minnesota now many years ago. But so now she's starting the Twin Cities Stone Soup group. And I have listened in on that group. And there's a lot of, I'd say there's about 10 people. Most of them seem to be writing novels.
Mhm.
Very interesting. And I only write poetry, so mine are very short in comparison. So you bring once a month some writing and people get called on. You can read for up to 5 minutes and get feedback.
Okay, and get feedback. Yeah.
And of course, it's been on Zoom just in this last 9 months, 9 months.
And the secret, I think, of a good writers group is that feedback, don't you, Wendy?
Mhm.
Because they know, people that have been writing for a while know what to give and what not to give with, you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Right.
This was, I think that's probably why our writers group didn't grow, because after you've been together for a while, you get a feeling on how to give the feedback. And it takes a while to come to that point. Say, by the way, Wendy, who was the name of the person who wrote the Stone Soup? Do you remember?
Stone.
Well, not the writer, but I know that the gal that's organizing it here, do you mean?
Well, I thought there was a book called Stone Soup.
Oh, maybe.
No?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Oh, okay, okay.
There
Wow,
definitely
that's-
is a book, Janet. I read it to my kids when they were little. It's a children's book.
Oh,
Yeah, the
Tell
whole
me
premise
more.
is that, you know, they don't have anything. They're poor.
Okay.
And but they talk very lovingly about adding things to the soup and how delicious it is. And it's a lovely children's book.
Okay, that's my memory then. Yeah, I remember it now. Beautiful story. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Wendy, if you feel like it, you're welcome. Please post a link to the writers group if she wants to get it in, you know, put it in the Village or whatever. Devin just said she had to leave, and then she thanked for the link to purchase your book, Mom. I would like to know, what was the hardest part besides working with your daughter and letting her boss you around? What was the hardest part of writing your book?
Organization.
Mm.
But, you know, I've learned now in looking back, you don't need to worry about that. It's going to organize itself.
Ah.
And I think that being able to work with you, Kelly, because we know each other so well, that didn't it sort of organize itself? I mean, it was a
Yeah, it did.
step-by-step kind of thing.
I noticed you were in the very beginning, you were tight-fisted with every piece of writing. You would not let go of anything.
What do you mean?
Well, like, you know, every piece of you know, whether it was Mother and the Speed Queen, which did make, you know, all the pieces, you wanted them all in there. But as we were honing it, you started to go, no, you know what? I don't think that belongs in the book. I think we'll save that for later.
Yeah.
You started to really, you know, edit yourself, I guess.
Yeah. I guess I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think we would, next time when you write your next book, we will hire an actual editor.
I was going to ask about that, whether you had worked with an editor or not, because I work with a lot of writers and editors, and occasionally there is tension between writer and editor because words are so precious.
Yes.
As a designer, I mean, editors make everyone look better and sound better, in my opinion, if it's a good editor. And but it's difficult sometimes, that relationship, because there is some tension.
No.
So that's kind of a universal thing that happens, do you think, Chris?
Not with everyone, but I work with curators and they love their words a lot.
You know,
things we would have hired is a proofreader and a developmental editor for sure next time.
Stephen King has written a book called On Writing. And in that book, he says, you have to be ready when it comes time for publishing to let go of those precious little babies that you have such fond memories about. You know, you have to get ready to let them go. Yeah.
Yeah, we would definitely, I am a terrible proofreader. I know that. I am perfectly fine with admitting that. And you will find one, I'm going to be uploading a new version that corrects that one. So I'm taking any and all. If you find other things, let me know before like the end of the month so that I can correct this version.
See this? I've found a few more, Kelly.
Oh no.
And I know they're typos, but what do you do?
Well, like I said, I'm not a proofreader, so
yeah,
I never claimed to be. Mom, we've got 15 minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions before Mom reads her final poem?
I have one question. I'm kind of private about stuff, especially tough experiences. Did you feel like it was a struggle for you to get that on paper and then know that other people are gonna know about those experiences? Or did you feel like, I'm fine, I'm gonna write this book, it's fine?
well, I guess to answer your question, I was fearful at first. And I thought, I'm never going to publish this. Never, never, never. But then as I grew older, and I don't know if age has so much to do with it, but my personality, I'm kind of a more of an introvert than an extrovert. I'm sort of in the middle, but I was a little afraid of hurting people, hurting somebody, or maybe hurting myself by telling too much. I don't know. Yeah, I was afraid, but I finally decided, what the heck? I don't care. Does that make sense, Shante?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we'd love to hear the poem that you would like to
Okay.
close this, unless,
Okay.
and any final thoughts, words of wisdom from you before we close
Well,
out.
I'll tell you, towards the end of the book, I did say quite a bit about what a pleasure it had been. And I mean that truly. It gave me such a good focus in my life for a while, that when it was finally closed up and done, more or less, I felt a loss. So you can be prepared for that if you're going to do it, I guess.
Mhm.
But I'm really glad that I am so grateful, Kelly. I have to say this to let you know this, Kelly. I'm so grateful that I had a child that was so interested and cherished what I was doing and admired it so much that you were willing to put forth all that work. I mean, I just sometimes go, I can't believe this kid, but I'm so grateful to you. Anyway, at the end of the book, after the acknowledgements, I had one last poem that I wrote. I'd like to read it. It's called Interim. The boat rocks gently tonight. The air cools, swirls with warm memories of today's sun. The stars hang high and steady, unbothered by Earth's winds or tomorrow's storm clouds gathering below the horizon. The boat and the moon move on toward the morning sky, accepting the course, content with the rocking lullaby of a quiet now.
Thank you, Mom.
You're
Yay.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thank
I
you for
appreciate it.
agreeing to do this. I know this isn't your most comfortable format. I wish we could be
No.
sitting around a living room and
Yeah,
having a reading, maybe someday soon.
yes.
Any
I've loved
final-
it. You've made me feel very comfortable, Kelly. Thank you. And
No.
thank everybody who tuned in. If you say that anymore, it is tuned in, right?
That
Tuned in?
works. Chris wants to know what's next. Good question.
You tell me, Chris.
I think you need to do another book.
Well, all I can say is maybe.
Have you thought
don't
about doing
know.
fiction?
No, I don't think so. I did tell you once I thought fiction, but that's hard for me to do. I don't know, like poetry, that's got to be from the heart. That can't really be fiction. That's got to be from some deep knowledge. And I think I'm more comfortable writing that way than trying to put a story down in words. I did try some short stories when I was teaching school, but I thought they weren't that great. No good. So I sort of quit that. Well,
Well,
who knows? Who knows?
I was thinking today, and see what you Athena Village people think about this. I was thinking today about asking Janet to join our collective and see if she wants to kind of run a writers group inside Athena Village. Because you were talking, Mom, you had looked at, was it Sherry's
Yes. No,
blog?
Sydney.
Or Sydney, yeah.
Sydney's
her blog.
blog.
And inside Athena Village, you could most definitely we could put a writers group together and you could kind of be the hostess. And you and Wendy and all the writers people can hang out in there and write and share and just kind of, do your thing, support one another and hang out. So we'll talk.
Sounds like
I
fun,
mean,
but it,
how you comment in there, you get online now, you've got your own computer.
see how she gets me to do stuff that way. You
Okay,
guys.
and before we go, you got to show them what's on your wall just to your right. Show them she's at her
Oh,
little
yes, yes.
writing desk in the
Yes, yes. My cousin, I'm the oldest cousin in my mother's family side. And I had oodles of cousins, 45 or something. And this one cousin was 4 or 5 years younger than I, but she was also an English teacher. So I sent her the first advanced copy and she did a great critique for me. And then she sent me this. Isn't that cool?
It's great. So now mom this kitchen is for writing also. So she's got her
Oh.
laptop sitting on her little desk in the kitchen, turn on her music, and
Yeah,
you can stand up right there and start dancing.
sounds like frittata, only sometimes the cook gets too busy and the frittata gets scorched. Remember that poem?
That poem is good too, yes. Well, thank
Okay.
you, everybody. We will see you in Athena Village if you feel like popping in. We'll get Janet and Wendy, maybe we'll get you two to pop in and get you writing. Wendy's already sharing her haiku and her folk poetry there, so.
I know it.
Yeah.
And Shantae, are you thinking of memoir? Can she hear me, Kelly?
Not a minute,
No,
no, she,
I want to write a business book. It'll tell a little bit of my story, but not my entire. I would
okay.
freak out if I had to do that.
Shantae just joined Joy and I as kind of the third leg of our stool in Athena Village. She's the doer, where Joy and I are a little bit we're both visionary types, and Shantae does things. She's a systems gal.
So she has enough stuff to do individual story. Or
She'll kick my butt to make sure I follow through on what I say.
Good.
Yeah, it's awesome. So
Okay, thank you all.
thank you all very much.
Janet.
Bye.
Thank you,
Say bye to
Janet.
Mitch.
Thank you, Janet.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, Kelly, now what do I do here?
You can just hang out for a second, Mom.
Oh, okay.
Bye. Nice
Great
to see you all.
you.
Great job, Janet.
Thank you.
Great